I tried to expose my roommate's dirty little secret at her party. I had no idea she was ready for war. The silence is the worst part. It's 8 a.m. the morning after Kira's 28th birthday party, and the only sound in our apartment is the low hum of the refrigerator. The living room is a graveyard of red plastic cups and limp streamers. A half-eaten cake sits on the counter, the cheerful frosting letters of "Happy Birthday, Kira," mocking me. Her bedroom door is closed, locked probably. I know because I tried it an hour ago, my knock sounding pathetic and loud in the oppressive quiet. My phone is a dead weight on the coffee table. It hasn't buzzed once. No texts in the group chat dissecting the night, no new tags on Instagram. In fact, when I tried to look up Kira's profile to see her party posts, I couldn't find her. A cold knot formed in my stomach. Then I checked Mel's profile. Gone, then David's. Gone, 5 of them all vanished, blocked. My mind keeps replaying it, a frantic loop of justification. It was just a joke. A stupid, maybe poorly timed joke, but that's all it was. People say dumb things when they've had too much cheap Prosecco. It's not a federal crime. It's not something you excommunicate someone for. How could things have gotten this bad this fast? I stare at her closed door, and a creeping dread, colder and sharper than any hangover, begins to settle in my bones. I wasn't just telling a joke. I was pulling a pin from a grenade, and I had no idea I was the one holding it. We'd been roommates for 3 years, Kira and I. Looking back now, sifting through the wreckage for clues, I realize I always saw our relationship through a lens of benevolent superiority. My life ran on Outlook calendars and quarterly performance reviews. Hers ran on creative bursts at 3 a.m. and the fluctuating price of silver wire. I was the stable one, the responsible one. Fiona, the claims analyst with a steady paycheck, a 401k, and a sensible bedtime. Kira was the dreamer, the artist, the one perpetually surrounded by tiny pots of paint, intricate tools I couldn't name, and the faint, sweet smell of curing resin that always seemed to cling to the living room curtains. Our dynamic was set early on. I paid a slightly larger share of the rent because my bedroom had the en-suite bathroom, a fact I'd mention with a self-deprecating laugh that wasn't really self-deprecating at all. It was a subtle, constant reminder of my seniority, my stability. When she'd be stressed about the cost of a new batch of rare wood for her keyboards, I'd be the one to say, "Don't worry about groceries this week, it's on me," with a magnanimous wave of my hand. I saw it as generosity. Now, I can almost picture the flicker of something in her eyes, pride, maybe, or resentment, that I'd chosen to interpret as simple gratitude. I once even sat her down and made her a budget spreadsheet, condescendingly color-coding her art supply expenses in red, genuinely believing I was helping her be more of an adult. She thanked me with a tight smile and never used it. "Oh, that's so cute," I'd say when she showed me a new diorama, a tiny, perfect little library scene complete with miniature leather-bound books. "I'm so happy you have this little hobby that brings you joy." Hobby. That was the word I always used. It was a neat little box I put her passion into, keeping it separate from the real world of spreadsheets and promotions. It was my way of patting her on the head. "You should really set up an Etsy for your little hobby," I'd suggested a dozen times, never hearing the quiet steel in her voice when she'd reply, "I have a business plan, Fiona. It's more than just Etsy." I'd just laugh it off. I was encouraging, of course, in the way you'd encourage a child's macaroni art. I never once considered it a real career path. How could it be? It was messy, unpredictable. It was art. Meanwhile, I was building a future. At least that's what I told myself. I was the anchor and she was the kite, and I genuinely believed that was a role we had both happily, wordlessly accepted. I was so damn sure I knew exactly what our story was about. The ground shifted about a month ago. It wasn't an earthquake, just a subtle tremor I failed to recognize. Kira had been working obsessively, locked in her room for days, emerging only for coffee and looking tired but electric. There was a new intensity to her, a focus that made my 9-tominous 5 grind feel sluggish and gray in comparison. Then one Tuesday evening, she walked into the living room, holding her phone like a trophy. She'd landed a commission from a semi-famous tech YouTuber to build a dozen custom keyboards for a giveaway. She wasn't just showing me a cool project. She was showing me the invoice. She showed me the number, her finger trembling slightly as she pointed to the final figure. "Fiona," she said, her voice a weird mix of breathless and defiant. "This one project, after materials, my take-home pay is more than your monthly salary. Before taxes, obviously." I remember the exact feeling. The air left my lungs in a silent whoosh. It was a physical punch. It was like the world tilted on its axis. My carefully constructed reality, the one where I was the successful one, the provider, the one with the real job, cracked down the middle. I managed a smile, a brittle thing that felt like glass. "Wow, Kira, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you." But the words tasted like ash. Pride wasn't what I felt. It was a cold, slithering thing in my gut. It was envy. Raw and ugly and undeniable. I, the one with the corporate benefits and the predictable career trajectory, was being outturned by a girl selling keyboards from her bedroom. From that day on, everything was different. The power dynamic in the apartment inverted. She wasn't just my quirky roommate anymore. She was a business owner. She started taking calls on her AirPods while pacing the living room, using words like fulfillment logistics and supply chain. She bought a new blazer, a sharp, professional one that made my work blouses look frumpy. She'd talk about meeting with a financial advisor, the same one my dad had recommended for me years ago, and I'd never gotten around to calling. The worst part was how she started talking about her work, not as a hobby, but as a brand. My gentle condescension no longer had a place to land. It was like trying to pat a shark on the head. I felt left behind. The anchor wasn't holding the kite anymore. The kite was soaring, and it had cut the dam's string. I was just a rock sitting at the bottom of the sea. The party was her coronation. Our small apartment was packed, buzzing with a vibrant energy I hadn't felt there before. It was a mix of our old mutual friends and a new crowd she'd met, creative types with cool glasses and confident laughs who talked about their projects and collaborations. Everyone was orbiting Kira. She was glowing, wearing a vintage silk dress she'd bought with her YouTuber money, as she jokingly called it. They toasted her success, her talent, her bravery. I stood near the kitchen, nursing a glass of Prosecco that was going down way too easily, feeling more and more like a ghost at my own feast. Every compliment she received felt like a subtle jab at my own mundane existence. "You're building an empire, Kira," someone shouted over the music. I took another large gulp of my drink. Empire? She was gluing tiny things together in her bedroom. The jealousy was a hot, sour taste in the back of my throat. The moment came about an hour in, after my third glass. A guy I didn't know, a handsome graphic designer named Julian who seemed particularly smitten, was holding court with her by the snack table. "Seriously, I have so much respect for you," he said, his voice carrying over the indie pop playlist. "Quitting your day job to go all in on your passion, that takes serious guts. Weren't you terrified?" Kira opened her mouth to answer, a modest, grateful smile on her face. She was about to deliver the perfect, inspiring soundbite. But before she could, I stepped forward, inserting myself into the circle. The Prosecco had dissolved my filter, replacing it with a slick, bitter confidence. I laughed, a sound that was a little too loud, a little too sharp. "Oh, guts," I said, swirling my glass dramatically. "She calls it guts. I call it maxing out 3 credit cards and taking a personal loan that would make our landlord weep." I looked around the circle, a smug grin plastered on my face, as if I were letting them in on a hilarious inside joke. I mean, it's easy to be brave when you're playing with the bank's money, right? You gotta admire that kind of burn-the-boats commitment. The words hung in the air, instantly sucking the warmth out of the room. A few people tittered nervously, unsure if it was a joke. Julian just stared at me, his smile frozen and confused. I saw Kira's face. For a split second, she looked like I had physically struck her. All the light and joy drained away, replaced by a pale, stunned shock. Her smile didn't just vanish, it shattered. But then something shifted. It was faster than I could process. The hurt hardened into something else, something cold and clear and utterly unreadable. She recovered in a heartbeat, forcing a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Fiona," she said, her voice dangerously light as she patted my arm. Always the practical one, keeping my feet on the ground. She smoothly turned back to Julian, completely cutting me out of the circle, and changed the subject, asking him about his work. Just like that, the conversation moved on, leaving me standing there, my stupid comment echoing in the sudden void around me. I told myself it was fine. It was just a little roast, what friends do. But I knew, deep down, I had crossed a line. I just had no idea how far away that line already was in my rearview mirror. The party died down around 2. One by one, friends hugged Kira goodbye at the door, their voices full of genuine warmth and admiration. "Your place looks amazing. We're so proud of you, Kay." I busied myself collecting empty cups and greasy napkins, avoiding her gaze, the silence between us growing heavier with each departing guest. Finally, it was just the 2 of us, standing in the wreckage of her celebration. The air was thick with unspoken things, smelling of stale beer and my own sour regret. "That was a pretty crappy thing to do, Fiona," she said. Her voice wasn't angry or hurt. It was flat, colder than the tile floor under my feet. It was the voice of a surgeon announcing a time of death. "Kira, come on, it was a joke," I started, my go-to defense already sounding flimsy and pathetic in the quiet room. "I'd had too much to drink. You know I'm proud of you. I was just ribbing you." She didn't even look at me. She just started methodically putting leftover pizza into a container, her movements precise and detached. "No, you're not," she said, her back still to me. "You've never been proud. You've been amused. You liked it when my hobby was a cute little thing that made you feel successful and generous. The second it became real, the second I didn't need you to feel sorry for me, you couldn't stand it." She finally turned, leaning against the counter, her eyes dark and unyielding. "You didn't tell a joke tonight. You tried to remind everyone, and maybe yourself, that I was still the broke, struggling artist you could look down on. You tried to put me back in my box, because you're terrified of the fact that I'm building a world you can't be the queen of." My throat went dry. "That's not true. I've always supported you." "Have you?" she interrupted, a humorless smile touching her lips. "For 3 years, you've been sharing your little concerns about me with our friends. My finances, my dating life, my lack of a real plan. You thought you were just venting to your best friend." She picked up her phone from the counter. Her thumb moved across the screen with practiced ease. "You thought I was your confidant, but really, I was just your audience. You needed someone to hear how much better you were." My phone buzzed on the counter. A notification from our group chat, apartment gals and pals. Then another, and another. A flurry of them, a digital machine gun firing into the silence. Kira's screen was lit up too. She looked from her phone to me, a chillingly neutral expression on her face. "You know," she said, her voice dropping to an almost conversational tone, "I got tired of being the secret keeper for someone who secretly resents them. So I decided to clear the air. I sent them a few of your greatest hits, the screenshots, about Mel's tacky wedding theme, about David's cringy attempts at stand-up, just so everyone is on the same page about how you really feel. I just couldn't handle the negativity anymore. Consider it my birthday gift to myself. A drama detox." The next morning was a blur of dawning horror. I woke up on the couch, my head pounding, to the sight of my phone's screen, a battlefield of notifications. The group chat was a wasteland. My desperate attempts at damage control from the night before, "Guys, that's totally out of context. Kira is twisting things," were met with a brutal wall of silence. I had been digitally shunned. I spent hours trying to call people. Most went straight to voicemail. David, who I'd known since college, actually picked up, but only to say, "I don't have anything to say to you, Fiona," before hanging up. The final, desperate call was to Mel. She was always the softest, the mediator. The phone rang 5 times, and just as I was about to give up, she answered. "What do you want?" Her voice was tired, stripped of its usual warmth. "Mel, please, you have to listen to me," I pleaded, tears welling up. "Kira's making it sound like I'm some kind of monster. We all say things in private. It was just venting." There was a long sigh on the other end of the line. "Was it, Fiona? Was it venting when you told Kira my fiancé was probably settling for me, or that my promotion was likely a diversity hire?" My blood ran cold. I had said that over wine months ago, feeling smug and superior. I never imagined it would leave the confines of our living room. Kira told us everything, Mel continued, her voice hardening. She said tonight was just the final straw. She said she couldn't watch you try to tear her down after you spent years tearing everyone else down behind their backs. She showed us a lot of things, years of things. I don't know who you are anymore, Fiona. I think it's best if we don't talk for a while. The click of the phone hanging up was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It wasn't just Kira. It was a systematic amputation. Kira hadn't just gotten angry. She had performed a calculated, precise excision, cutting me out of the social body we shared with clean, devastating strokes. She had known exactly where to cut because I had spent 3 years handing her the scalpel. It's been 3 months. Kira moved out a week after the party, a process executed with chilling efficiency. She hired movers, packed her things while I was at work, and left her key on the clean kitchen counter. A new roommate, a quiet nursing student named Amelia, moved in. The apartment is clean, peaceful, and feels entirely alien. There are no more tiny paint pots on the windowsill, no faint smell of resin. There's just a hollow echo where a life used to be. My world has shrunk to the size of my cubicle and this silent apartment. The social calendar that used to be full of brunches, movie nights, and weekend trips is now a barren wasteland. The isolation is a physical weight. At work, my focus is shot. I stare at insurance claims, the words blurring together, my mind replaying conversations, searching for the exact moment I planted the seeds of my own destruction. My boss has already commented on my declining performance. Last night, I couldn't sleep, so I did the one thing you're never supposed to do. I looked at their social media through my old, forgotten backup account. There they were, all of them. Mel, David, the whole group, celebrating at the grand opening of Kira's new workshop space. It was a beautiful, light-filled studio, the kind of place I'd once told her was a bit of a pipe dream. In the center of every photo was Kira, surrounded by the friends who were once my friends, raising a champagne flute. She was laughing, her face radiant with a success that was entirely her own. She looked free. I closed the laptop, the manufactured joy of the pictures burning in my mind. The most terrifying realization finally settled in, cold and heavy in the pit of my stomach. I had spent 3 years thinking I was the protagonist of our story, the stable center around which her chaotic, artistic life revolved. But I was wrong. I wasn't even a main character. In her story, I was the villain she had to overcome. I always thought I was looking down on her from some great height, never realizing that in her eyes, we were in a race I didn't even know I was running. And when I finally tried to trip her, to pull her back to my level, I discovered she hadn't just crossed the finish line. She'd already built a fortress there and was watching me self-destruct from the ramparts.